Hello, everybody. This is Lee Cole 3 with my partner, James Proctor. James, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing really well. How are you today?
Good. And we have a special guest here today, and let me tell you why I have him on. Tony Silo, and if he wants to tell you his name, which people found, he could, when we start the interview, he could tell you. But the fact is this: Tony's been under attack, a consistent attack. So I said to myself, nobody really knows anything about Tony because he's been defending himself from day one. Uh, Tony and I had some issues. We cleared them up like men, and that was it. It's over. Uh, and so I just found when I heard him talking the other day about a guy named Agnostic, and he pretty much put Agnostic in the corner, and he called him out on quite a few lies that he told. And I could tell by Tony what Tony was saying that he has a very interesting life, James. And so I want to know about his interest in life. So I said, "What the heck? Let's do this interview." Tony, how you
Yeah.
doing today, my man?
I'm doing good. It's great to see both of you guys, and I appreciate you having me.
Yep,
Now,
thank
did
you.
you want to say your name, Tony?
My name is Anthony Joseph Sibilio. Period.
That's it,
There it
people.
is.
That's simple.
It's been
That's
out there
simple.
for weeks.
Yes,
The
and
only reason I ever kept it private was because of my children. Any other reason, it would have came right out.
right. And you have no criminal record, do you?
Zero.
Zero. So, I guess everybody was trying to find out who you were because, like other people who were hiding, when they were discovered, they had criminal records. It came to a surprise when they had no criminal record on you. You know that, Tony?
Yeah, boys will be boys. We've all been arrested for fights in the street, but never convicted of anything, and that's as far as it ever went.
I think you're one of the few people on mob in the mob genre that has been convicted of something, Tony. So,
You know what? You find out every day, and I got to be honest with you, it surprises me of the ones that you would never think actually have a record.
and you and James are like recordless. You guys are like the good boys. But I got a funny feeling, Tony, you're not really a good guy. You just didn't do no time. I mean, out in the street, you
Listen,
were
I was brought up in a neighborhood where I tell you straight up, they would bring you around the corner and they would kick you in the ass. It's one of the more cleaner neighborhoods that you're gonna find in any of those organizations.
So why don't you tell us about where you were born and give us an idea of your upbringing?
Okay, I was born in Corona, Queens. That's in New York, and I was there till I was about 13 years old. Then we moved to Jackson Heights, Queens, which is the next step, like upgrade from Corona in Queens to Jackson Heights. And spent my whole time always being around the neighborhood of Corona. And then we graduated to College Point, which is another step up, and then eventually into Whitestone, and then Bayside when we had the kids. And pretty much it ended there when my son passed away.
So you did the
It's like,
you did the full Queens ride. You just about where you were in quite a few places in Queens then.
well, what happened was every time I was able to afford the next step up, I did, but I always stayed within a 6.5, 7 mile radius. I never left the town. You know what I mean? I never left home.
Right. Were you up near Bell Boulevard and around that part uh, of
Actually, when I was first married, my very first apartment was on Bell Boulevard and 16th Avenue. But I did the whole Bell Boulevard scene, all that bullshit that goes along with it.
so what type of kid were you?
Very athletic. I played a lot of ice hockey, believe it or not. And then we got into boxing, of course, because we had a gym inside of a restaurant that nobody ever knew about. And what they had was they called them smoker fights, underground fights, and stuff like that. And that's where the boxing stuff came into play. And I actually, through very distinguished, established guys in a certain lifestyle, met everybody. I mean, you'd be shocked who you get to meet on a regular basis, nightly basis.
So why don't you tell us about some of those guys you met when you were younger that were nice guys, even though people may think that they weren't?
Okay, well, I grew up in Corona, and I grew up around Tony Federici. Played a lot of racquetball with him. Hung around the neighborhood with him all the time. And a few of the guys in the neighborhood. he took quite a liking to me at a very, very young age. And until he got sick, I was around with him all the time and just different things, rides here, rides there, rides everywhere, you know. And he wouldn't get in the car with many people. So that's how I kind of figured out agnostic just during that interview the other night. He met him, then he went to the restaurant for lunch, sat down with him. Well, one thing is, he's never around the restaurant during the daytime. And if he is, it's all business, either down in the office, in the kitchen, because he was on top of the food like you could not imagine, or across the street, just smoking a cigar with the guys, you know, and things like that. But he would never have time. Not that he would never have time. He was very, very cautious man who took a step away from anybody like that, you know. So he wouldn't be
And
sitting at a table having lunch with a guy like that.
were you on the edge of that life where you were on the edge, but you didn't step over? I mean, what would you say? How would you
I
consider yourself?
once you're around it and you see the glory that goes with it in another way, money, cars, and all that stuff, yeah, I was really wanting to be in that life, but I was kept out of that life on purpose, but still able to be with the guys every day. You know what
And
I
who
mean? It
kept?
was more like, oh, between my father and Tony and a couple of other guys in the neighborhood who are now gone, they kept me out of anything like that. But I was around them every day.
Now there must have been people that wanted you to be in the life, to join the life. I'm sure there's people that were kind of pushing you, weren't there?
There were guys that were under the person that I was around all the time. You know, Tony's a tough kid. Let's bring him around. We can get him to do this. We can get him to. Absolutely not. Did I do a couple of things here and there? Yeah, but nothing braggadociously. You know, and I've never said that on here. You know,
Right.
a couple of the older guys that got out after doing a lot of time, I would drive them certain places to take care of things. I mean, I was that trusted that I got to drive around some very, very powerful people. And, you know, that was it. We did what we had to do and we came back. But I never went inside those rooms. I was always outside those rooms. And I never bragged about being in those rooms.
All right.
But I was around pretty big name in that life for my whole life.
James?
Yeah. So,
Tony,
yeah, I think that Anthony Federica, to me, he's fascinating because he's one of those that kind of stayed under the radar. He didn't really get in trouble until later in life, and he actually is one of those that I remember he did a fundraiser once for one of the hospitals. I don't know if it was in Corona or
Flushing
what.
Hospital.
Flushing
Flushing Hospital.
Hospital. Yeah. So I mean, he really had a kind of that side to him that was very interesting, and I believe he was kind of like the guy, one of those that had pigeons, right, on
Yeah, I
top
had a
of.
pigeon coop on top of the restaurant. Yes,
Yeah. So he had the Parkside restaurant, right?
correct. Parkside Restaurant, 108 and 51st Avenue. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that was pretty fascinating. So did you grow up with him, or just happen to be in the neighborhood when you moved to
No,
Corona?
he's old enough to me, my dad. I met him as a kid playing
Hmm.
paddleball in Flushing Meadow Park of all places.
Yeah.
And I seen him around the neighborhood, obviously, and he says, "Hey, go get White Castles one day." And it was a friendship from there. I
Oh,
mean,
very good.
he fed everybody in that park every day in the beginning.
Wow.
And then as, you know, he got bigger, I guess, you know, we went to indoor facilities. There he is. That's an older picture too, recently.
Mm. Yeah, I
That
know
can't
he
be
had
more than
leukemia, right? He died recently, didn't he?
he died November 9th of
Yeah,
22.
right.
Correct.
And what was
But
his rank?
he was actually, well, he was a captain, obviously, but
He
he
was
was
okay.
he was the acting boss for a while when the other guy went away.
And the area that he was in, there's a lot of money in that area, isn't there?
Yes and no. You had money in that particular area, but the surrounding parts of Corona, no, absolutely not. You know, just around the area of the restaurant, yes, there was money, and a lot of money makers came out of that neighborhood,
Yeah.
including the gentleman that started this whole bullshit the other night, Openzanos, you know, the whole family, you know, they all came out of that neighborhood. And their cousin that they came over with is still over there. He's the stablemate barber for everybody in that neighborhood.
Do you speak to some of these guys still, Tony?
Every time I'm up there, yes.
So when you go up there, where do you like to? Where do you and your woman like to go?
I bought another condo up there. We go to all the restaurants, see old friends, and that's about it. You know, my son's up there. Spend quite a bit of time with my son. I have a bond with him like no other. I love my children. Nobody will ever find anything wrong that I did as a father, and I'm very proud of that. But I spend a lot of time with my son, and we see a lot of friends. That's it.
Are you
We don't go up there just to vacation. We have another home there, but I'm not going to say where it is because
right?
for personal reasons right now.
And do you know where Nassau Knolls is up in that area and stuff?
Nassau Knolls. No, not
It's
if
a
you give me something.
cemetery up there. My family has a plot right there, right on the border.
Oh, you're going out. I know what you're talking. You're going out a ways. You're talking
Yeah.
about going out to the island. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah, but it's right
Okay.
over to, you go into Queens and into the island. But we have a plot out there, and we just used the last one. So there's 12 of us buried out there. I can't be buried out there. So
Well,
Texas
I tell
it
you
is.
what, when my mother and father are buried, okay, the exact plot, they're one on top of the other, is Calvary Cemetery. And the Godfather scene, when Marlon Brando passes away,
Yeah.
that's the plot next to them. And that's exactly where they're buried. They're buried right next to the plot that they used in The Godfather. I'll actually take some pictures when I'm up there and send them to you.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
You get to, yeah, it's wild. It's really good.
Okay, so you're a teenager and you get older, you're meeting these guys. So what path did you wind up taking in life? What did you do to make money? What did you do to make a living, Tony?
Okay, I started off, they were like, you're going to go to work in the unions. And obviously, you take a union job, you're going to work during the day. That didn't work for certain people that wanted me around. So then they gave me karaoke bars to run. And they set up a security company for me to be the security company. And I hired all guys from Corona to be, bouncers pretty much. And I got to control all of them and do the Joker poker machines in everyone, which I was in charge of at that time. Only in the Korean ones was my gig.
And
So
and
they
and
one
what area are we talking pretty much when you were doing this?
all of Flushing, all of Flushing, right across from Shea Stadium, as far out as Francis Lewis Boulevard was the furthest one.
And
We
what
didn't
year?
go.
What year are you talking? Because I was in Flushing. I was in Flushing in the '80s. So in the late '80s, 86, 87, 88.
No, my son was a baby, so I started in Flushing around 95, 96.
95, 96. And
Right.
so I
And
was
we opened
going,
up.
I was going by that time.
Right. But
Yeah.
if you go back to the 80s, those bars weren't even on that street. If you go on 162nd between Northern and 43rd now, going towards the LIE, you won't recognize one sign. They're all in Korean.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of problems there because of the karaoke, the drinking, and they bring women in from Korea, obviously, and they would host the men, and they would take like an old time bar, we'll say, and chop it up into 5, 6 rooms and in a living room atmosphere. And they would have the big old box screen TVs, and you would go in there, you would order, and everything was Johnny Walker. That's it.
Hmm.
And you had to have a minimum of 2 bottles of Johnny Walker Black, plus pay for the initial hour, which at that time was $200, which wasn't much. But the Johnny Walker Black was 2 and a quarter a bottle. I mean, there was a lot of money in that.
And how long did you stay? How long did you do this? I mean, was it a couple decades? I mean, how long did you do this kind of work?
I did it for 11 and a half years. And I
And
ended
what?
up owning the security company. And then we branched off into Koreatown in Manhattan and had about 8 clubs that we controlled there.
So Tony, you're as New Yorker as it gets.
Yes, I am. I love New York.
I love New York too. I moved out when I was 2001. It was the last time I've been back to New York, but I loved it before 2001. To be honest with you. But
I
after
love
that,
Florida. I love Florida, but I do miss New York because of my son. But you know what? It's just not the same. So it's not the New York you know anymore. Everything,
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Exactly.
So I do spend quite a bit of time there, but my schedule is so busy when I'm up there, and I rarely go into Manhattan anymore. There's
Right.
nothing left that we're involved with in Manhattan at all.
So you wind up getting married and having a couple sons. Is that correct?
Man, I got married in 1991. I had my first September of 91. Had my first son in September of 92, and then I had Matt in 96 in April. We raised them. Went through. Obviously, they both went to school with Angel's nephew John, uh, Peter's son John. I got to get the
Right.
Johns corrected here. So Matt was very friendly with Johnny. Anthony was very extremely friendly with Johnny, and they hung out over there. I had a lot of friends over there. And, that was pretty much it. And my son passed away in 2016, and I just couldn't take it no more over there. Everything was a memory. I mean, even the house. The house has been empty since 2016.
So you're married, and during the time you were married, did you get away from the Joker poker and go to did you stay in the security
No,
business?
no, 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 no. I was in the security business until 06, 07. I was over there. No, it actually gave my kids the better life making that kind of money. I
Yes,
mean, I was
because
in
when
control of over 35 guys. They could have, if you owed anything, you were paying.
So you owned the
I
company,
was,
right? So it was your
I owned the
company, or
company.
yeah.
But I also had two partners that they told me it would be smart to bring in retired police officers, but
Hmm.
pretty decent ranking, because some of those clubs, I mean, there was a few killings, a couple in Manhattan on 35th Street, and there was two or three killings in Queens.
Yeah.
So they try to go without security. We had nothing to do with that. That was, Asian on Asian crime there.
Right.
But no, we eventually ran, I would say 99 out of every 100 bars doing that, karaoke bars.
So you would
We got, but
you
we got
handled
into
the
the
secure.
nightclub
Yeah.
business,
Hmm.
handled the security business, handled the purchasing of the alcohol, handled the cigarettes, which was huge.
Right.
Back in those days, Lee, I don't know if you remember, cigarettes were topped out at about going back into the mid 90s at around $5.56 a pack. They were getting $20 a pack back then in the bars.
Wow.
So
yeah,
we had a
yeah,
couple of hookups that were able to get them through the military, of all places. One of the cops was in the military prior. I don't know what you would call it, but he would go get them, and we made a fortune just off of cigarettes. We didn't even have to go to Carolinas. He was just bringing them in from there. But
Yeah,
he
you didn't have
also
the
brought.
taxes, is what it was. You didn't have the federal
Well,
tax. So
well,
they.
I was
Chance
involved with the
tried to explain it to
yeah,
me.
yeah, I was involved with the cigarettes in Flushings that you've talked about that. But back then they used to bring them in from the Indian reservation, and
Mhm.
there was Israelis there. They had this New York stamp, and they would put the stamp on it, and then they would make a huge profit off of them.
I tell you,
But
the one time I almost got in trouble, and I mean real trouble. We bought Marlboros and Marlboro Lights. Those were the two largest selling cigarettes. Marlboro, Marlboro Light, and if you remember Parliament, the one that had
yeah,
the dark blue and the white. Okay, so we had an Irish guy, and he was a good friend of mine. I knew him through the construction business because I dabbled in that a little bit too. And he says, I got a guy, he's got 10, 18 wheelers full of Marlboros and Marlboro Lights. I said, what kind of prices are you looking for? He goes, $5 a carton. I said, no, we got it for that kind of price. We're going to negotiate it down. Well, what I didn't know, we bought them all. They were from South Africa. However, the hell that I don't know how he got them here or whatever. I don't know that end of the story. The tobacco was like smoking poison. What
Mhm.
yeah,
was the difference in the tobacco? And actually found some people who bought them out. Thank God, because I would have been stuck with all of these.
Mhm.
It was my deal. I went out and made the deal. It wasn't that they were illegal cigarettes, or it's just that the tobacco in South Africa is completely different than United States tobacco. So I mean, but there was such a profit in cigarettes. We were thinking about driving to the Carolinas, and I was talking to this guy one night. His name was Paul. He was telling me, "Come on, take a walk with me around the corner. I want to ask you something." And that's when he told me about buying from the military and stuff like that. I think it was the packaging store or the packing store, or something they call it.
right,
Jen's tried to explain it. I don't know. I was only in there for a couple of weeks. So whatever it was, and that's where I made a boatload of money. I was actually able to buy my first home off of that.
Well,
You
you
know,
got
the
something.
first,
I got caught up in cigarettes in the flushing areas too, and it almost put me in jail. But that's my own story. But that's funny that you talked about that. People don't realize how big the cigarette business was back when you're talking. It was a big business.
you had guys, if you remember, Lee, back in those times, that would make these daily trips to the Carolinas and back. Carolinas and back. I'm like, once you figure out your income going, coming, and you spend the night because you're not going to make the trip in one day, you made like only $2 a carton at the end of that whole
Hmm.
sham because you had to pay for, you went up there, you stayed a night or two, then you had to pay your gas money there, your gas money back. Wasn't that you were driving a little Hyundai back then because they didn't have them. And if you were going to bring back a nice shipment, you had to at least have a station wagon,
Hmm.
you know. And then you
Yeah,
got to remember you had to pay a partner so it didn't look like one guy driving. Everything was covered with the right way,
and hope that
and a
you didn't
lot of
get
people
pulled. And
got
hope
pinched.
you didn't get pulled over. You know.
Exactly. So what you would do, what they had was they found an older couple and they actually went back and forth a few times. But God forbid you get pinched. So, what 60, 65-year-old woman's going to sit there and say, I'm going to take a rap on cigarettes for these guys? Not going to happen. And so we ended up we didn't even have to buy them like that. We could have bought them regular and still made it because, like I said, we were getting $18 to $20 a pack in these bars.
Hmm.
And that was it. And we all did very well with them.
And did you? I don't know if you knew back then, but back then the 7-Elevens they had to be franchised out because they lost they bought they lost their liquor license because of selling to underage people, and that was the best thing to happen to the mob back then because they had people buying them up, and they were involved in all the 7-Elevens. That's how they got involved with the cigarettes and the beer and all that stuff.
Now
Big
you
business
brought up
back then.
something, but you brought up something the other night and it struck a nerve because you said store 24. Now
Yes.
there were several store 24s. Every store 24 in that area every one of them were bought up by 7-Eleven.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, so I wound up getting a job with Store 24, and I thought that they were going to be a great company. I worked with them for a couple of years, but then someone from another store, I don't want to say where it is because people be calling it. Uh, uh,
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I
You're
went
right,
to
man.
work for that guy, and that's where I got in trouble. Uh, I made a lot of money, but it changed my life. Let me put it that way.
You
But
gotta be very, very careful in life. But I mean, I learned such a way, and if you look in the neighborhood, nobody ever got in trouble because they were very, very. There were guys who got in trouble. Don't get me wrong, but such a cautious neighborhood that they were very, very intelligent guys. I mean,
yes,
look at some of the rankings. I don't got to say them; they're all out there, all over the place. Some of these guys' rankings, and never that kind of time. And believe it or not, the attorney that you guys had on a couple of weeks ago, Maddie, represented Tony
Hmm.
and a couple of other guys in that neighborhood.
he's a hell of a lawyer. Good guy. But
Yeah.
listen, Tony. So okay, so here you are. You're working the security. So um, now you had something very horrible happen in your life. Was it before you retired, or right after you retired, or were you working at that time?
No, I was still dabbling around with little things here and there, and it got so bad. Anthony, and you're talking about my son Anthony, right?
Yes,
So what
yes.
happened was Anthony was a star hockey player. He was a great goalie, and he won a couple of championships in high school, back to back. And then you had colleges looking for him. So what had happened, he went up to a summer camp up in Boston University area, and he completely tore his hamstring. But we thought it was just a summer camp for hockey because I had gone to several at Providence College, believe it or not. All right. Matter of fact, I was up there 8 summers in a row. And I didn't understand it, but my father said, we got to go to Providence. So you go to hockey camp, and that's where I learned how to play within 2 weeks. I knew how to skate the full nine up there at a young age. And my mother and father would stay at a hotel. And unbeknownst to me, my father had a lot of friends up in that area. So it worked out for that, and I had a great time. And I actually went to all the camps under Lou Lamorello, who eventually took over the New Jersey Devils, and I believe he's with the Islanders now.
Yep.
I know he's still in the league, but he won a
Yeah.
few Stanley Cups. but I was up there every year. So what happened was pills became a big thing. And when he tore his hamstring, they actually had doctors that were giving them oxycodone, 20 milligrams.
And what year did that
Because of
start? What year did he start taking the prescriptions and the pain medication?
Okay, once we finally got him into rehab, about the second or third time, he broke down and said he was taking them since junior year of high school.
Right.
I would have never ever guessed. He was that good at hiding it. And it just got worse and worse to eventually we moved him to Florida one time, then we moved him back to New York because he got into some trouble. But when I went to clean the apartment out, because I rented him a beautiful apartment in Orlando, the first one didn't last it lasted about a night. You see them in the magazines, on the internet, they look beautiful. You get there, they're the worst drug communities in the world.
Right.
So what happened was, thank God I had a house there, as in, you're out, stay here for a week. And then we finally found him a beautiful apartment. So when I got down there, I had to get my ex-wife went down there. She got the car, took the car back, brought the car to my house. And I got there the next day after she left. I found syringes under the seats. I was like, oh. So a couple of his friends who were calling me on a regular basis, who were trying to keep him clean, said he'll disappear for a day, 2 days, 3 days. But what had happened was he didn't call for about 5, 6 days.
Mm.
So I was so busy, I told my wife, you get on the damn next plane and go find out what the fuck's going on there. Frank, my friend of mine, Frank, will pick you up. I apologize for the curse there. I said, a friend of mine will pick you up. I said, and he's going to take you right to the apartment. Well, she got to the apartment and it was a pure disaster. Pure disaster. So when I got there, maybe 2 days later, I found a lot of little black marks on the carpet. And I didn't know what the hell it was. And I had asked one of his friends named Rashan. I said, Rashan, what's all this black shit all over the carpets? And he said it was black tar heroin.
Oh,
And I was
goodness.
like, what the hell is this? With all the knowledge I had never heard of it before. And I'm going back to 2013-ish, around that time, because there was so many movements for him during those ages. And I said, all right. So we got him back to New York. It lasted another couple of weeks. He was clean again, went through the whole bullshit with the detox out in Nassau Community Hospital, went a few other places. Zero. It never worked.
Hmm.
So finally, I went to a priest from Long Island City. His name was Father Dave. He's now Monsignor Quesada in Mount Carmel in Brooklyn. And one of the guys from Social Club there said, go see him and tell him he's got to help your son. Now, I knew him since I was a kid. He sent him to a behavioral place up in Westchester called St. Christopher's.
Mm-hmm.
That was the final one that got him kind of like kicked. You know what I mean? But let me just skip a second. I'm going way too fast. The one right before that, it was upstate as well. And it seemed like it was really working, right? But you're not there. You don't know what's going on. So what happened was we went up there for a weekend visit. You get to go up on a Sunday afternoon. Turned out that I knew like half of the people in there that were my age.
Mm.
He was one of the younger guys in there. But they split them up in age brackets, and they actually put an older guy with a younger guy in a lot of the rooms. Well, because I knew these guys, his name got called over a loudspeaker that you could hear on the fields where we were all sitting down at picnic tables. How does your father know all these people? Because I really don't have no idea. They were coming up to me, hugging me and stuff. So they had called them into the office, and then they called me and my wife up at the time, and they said, listen, this isn't going to work. And he goes, you just said hello to some of the baddest drug dealers in Brooklyn and the Bronx, which I didn't really know. I didn't follow it at all like that. I never got into any drugs at all myself. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? I said, we're going to try and see, but we think he might get special privileges from these guys, and we know something's going on here. Sure enough, within a week, he was out of that.
Wow.
They were giving him whatever he would want.
Right.
So back to the house, and now we got to try and figure it out again. And what happens is with this goddamn insurance, they'll cover you, but then you're frozen for 90 days. So let's say you go for 10 days. You got to wait another 81 days before you can get back in again. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
So now we start going out of pocket for detoxes and rehabs. And we spent a ton of money. It's expensive. At the time, it was the first one I paid for was $28,000 for 30 days. All right. So you go through the detox, which is usually, they say 7 days. First couple of times it was 2, 3 days. And then the more they started learning about drugs, the longer they figured heroin, a couple of other drugs like the oxycodone became like 7, 10, 14 days of detox. So
Wow.
now let's say you're in a 10-day detox, all of a sudden you're only covered for another 18. So if you wanted the full month of rehab, you would have to pay for 10 days out of that on your own, which we didn't have a problem doing. We were both working. We both had a good, nice incomes. And that's where we went from there. And God forbid we ever needed money. There was always people to go to, very good people.
Right.
So, I mean, so none of these pay ones were working. None of these ones that were covered by insurance were working. So we got him up in St. Christopher's, and it's a behavioral, more of a behavior, like for bad kids and stuff like that.
And
Well,
where's
they
that
work
located?
your,
Where's that located, St. Christopher's?
I believe it's in Harrison, New York.
Okay.
It was so many years ago, but I think it's like right on Harrison off that road there. And you're in the middle of nowhere. It's just this bit, it's ran by the monks and stuff like the Franciscan monks. So we went up there and we did this whole thing, went through the whole intake. I took a hotel for 3 days because if he escaped, it would have been another disaster because he did that quite a few times also. He liked it. He stayed, but they worked them to the bone. They had so much property. I couldn't even tell you, but the property they owned was ridiculous. So now they had a cemetery on the place too, on the grounds as well. And these kids would dig graves. They had all the machinery there, but they made you dig by hand. So by the time they got back, had dinner, maybe caught a basketball game, a baseball game, a football game, whatever time of the year it was, they were exhausted and passed out. So that was the final one that
Are you
actually
talking
worked.
about Are you talking about Graymore, where the monks were?
Um,
They had a Christmas.
it
They had a
could be.
Christmas.
I'd have to ask my ex exactly. I was only up there 3 times because they really don't want you involved. You know what I
Right. They
mean?
have lots of
They
monks, and they have
were
a rehabilitation center, and those guys don't play around. I'm very familiar with that place, by the way.
okay. I believe
Yeah.
that's the place. I have to ask her
Yeah.
because they really didn't want the parents' involvement, the brothers' involvement. They wanted to control it their way, and it worked for quite a few people.
How old was he
So
at the time? How old was your son during this
at
time?
that time, he was 22.
Okay, and so he
So
started in 2013, and he was what 15, 16 when he started. I guess 16 when he.
whatever a junior would be in high school, I guess around 16 sounded more
Yeah.
familiar at the time. So what happened was right out of there, never came back to Queens. We went to, I believe it was, I don't remember the airport. I'm not gonna lie, but we flew right into Orlando because we had a home there already in Champions Gate, which is more Davenport, if you're familiar with the area at all. All right. And he moved down right by the arena where the Orlando Magic were playing. Horrible. The communities around there are horrible
Yeah.
unless you're in College Park and stuff like that. But you don't know. You see on the internet, if you went on right now, they look like these beautiful 5-star resorts. And when you get there, you see diapers floating around in the pool and shit. Uh-oh, here we go again. So it didn't last the one night. My youngest son was going to stay with him the first night, sleep with his big brother. Okay, didn't work. So what happened was he had a relapse when he got into the nicer apartment, and that's when the pills went to heroin.
Right.
And like I said, I went there to clean it out. That lasted for about 5, 6 months, and told me he was working, never asked for money, told me he kept the job he did, and he liked it. He said it wasn't as high as paying as what I could have got him in Winter Haven or Davenport. All right, well, went by a few months, never asked for a dollar. found out he was buying and selling his own shit. They were cracking it up, doing whatever they do with it. I couldn't explain it because I really don't know how they do that. But they'll buy a bigger amount and they'll sell it in smaller bags, is what I was told. You know. So I went there, cleaned it out, took his car, had it shipped back to New York. And when I went to go clean it out, that's when I found the syringes. And I was like, what the hell is really been going on in my son's life? And that led to saying, Christopher's got whatever that place is you're saying.
Right.
So
Yeah.
he was
Well,
up there.
I'm very
He,
familiar with it. I can't believe you're actually talking about it because it's where it's up on the hill when you drive up that beautiful roadway. And it's all,
exactly.
yeah. I'm very, and they have a beautiful Christmas shop off to the left that the monks run. Uh, so I'm very familiar.
And the scenery, taking the ride up there is absolutely stunning. I mean, you get the
Mhm.
trees, you get, I mean, it's just beautiful.
And St.
So
Christopher's is the rehabilitation center.
they call it, because of, I guess, technical laws, they call it behavioral clinic. But
Yeah,
they have, doctors on staff, they have drug
yeah.
counselors on staff,
And they don't play
they have
around.
it.
They don't play around there. They will throw you
No.
out if you mess up one time. They don't play.
And I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and your family lives 5 hours away, get out. And that's the way it
Mhm.
was
They
because
tell
there
you
were
to
a
go to the
lot of
bottom of the
stories.
hill.
And they really break you down to the bottom of the hill as well when you get there, which I think finally did it. So what they suggested when I first got him back to Florida, the third time now, okay, is we'd like him to go into a halfway house, transitional house is what they call it. Everybody says halfway house, he was a prison. No, he was in a transitional drug and alcohol free home in Clearwater. And I got very friendly with the owner. His father had money. He bought him like an old boutique style hotel that had
Right.
12 on the bottom, 12 on the top. And they would put from between 2 to 4 people in the room, depending on what you were willing to pay on top of, you know, what you made. That was all cash. So we put him in a 2-man room. We wanted him to have some privacy. They tested him twice a week. I lived so close. I was about no more than an hour ride. I went and seen him 3 days a week for lunch and right to the bathroom. I'm going to take these piss tests.
Yeah.
Nothing. Zero. Worked like a charm. So then he moved into, when he left there after 2 months, he went to Winter Haven. This time I made him go work with friends of mine. They were doing all the underground plumbing and piping before you can put anything on top of the ground, you got to do the underground work. He was involved in that. Cleaned his act up so good, got himself back in shape. I mean, beautiful. Everything was working fine. So he was down there for exactly 18 months, and I think about 8 days. They said 9 days at the time. And we did the first Christmas in Florida at my home. Beautiful. Went off without a hitch. Then the second Christmas came, and my son Matt was in college at the time. Dad, okay, can we go home this year for Christmas? My wife and me, well, basically we were already living apart
Right.
because I went one place with him, she stayed back, and it pretty much just destroyed us. So what happened was it was supposed to be that we were going to leave the night before Christmas Eve, December 23rd. So she's up there. My son's out of college break. He's already up there. Couple of family members he wanted to see. He wanted to go up there because this is how far he came. He had bought an engagement ring and put it in the safe in my house. Met a beautiful girl over that time, and they were going to get engaged on Christmas Eve. All right. So he goes, "Can I go up?" And he asked kind of half-assed. Everybody else was asking, my ex-wife, my son, whatever. So I didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it, and because of work commitments, I could not leave until the 23rd. I had too many commitments going on down there because now I was involved in construction projects down there, overlooking,
Right.
making sure everything got in and out. Nothing major where I was a builder or anything. I was basically in charge of making sure everything went smooth. I finally caved in and said, you know what, we'll let him go. So now we're on December 20th of 2016. Got him his ticket, drove him to the airport, made sure he got through, everything was fine. Couple of guys from the old neighborhood were waiting for him at the curb. He put it on Facebook. That's how they cracked this whole thing. They caught it on the video cameras. A drug dealer found out on his Facebook page that he was coming home. He must have sat in the airport, according to this video, for 9.5 hours that day, waiting to see what plane to get off. But we knew it was JetBlue. You know what I mean? It was either
Right.
JetBlue. And he handed it to him on video right in the airport, inside the airport. Got himself through security and everything. So he came home. My wife called me that night and she said he's complaining of stomach aches and headaches. I said, nah, I wouldn't worry about it yet. Then she called me. That was around 8:30, 9 o'clock. He had gone to CVS at the time, you know, the CVS drugstores, to buy
Yep.
a couple of Christmas cards and stuff, which was a bullshit story. He was already high and he went to go meet the guy to get more stuff.
Okay,
So,
James, I
well,
can't see your face, just so you know your screen's black.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
James, we lost you. So
Yeah.
what happened was she calls me up the next morning. I said, how'd everything go? He woke up this morning. He said he felt a little better, had breakfast. You know, we're going to go out for dinner tonight. I said, all right. And she was frantic and very nervous. I said, well, I'm coming in 2 days. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. And about 6 o'clock, 6:15, between 6 and 6:15, I can't think of the exact time. I got a phone call. I didn't understand a word she was talking about. All I heard was ambulances starting to come. Like you heard them at a distance on the phone and you heard them getting closer. And I didn't understand. She couldn't make sense of one word.
Hmm.
All I heard was something dead, something dead. I'm like, what the fuck? Right? And the phone hung up, the phone dropped. Then I finally called back, and that's when we had house phones. I called back the house phone. What the hell's going on in my house? I can hear all kinds of shit going on there.
Hmm.
And they were trying to resuscitate him. She went into the bedroom to wake him up to go to dinner. They were supposed to go out to a friend of ours' homes out in Long Island, and he never woke up. There was nothing, you know.
Right.
So when I was able, and I cannot mention that guy's name, I was able to get on a private plane that was owned by a neighbor, not by me. I do not own private planes. And my neighbor put me on a plane down in the Orlando area where I was still at that time, but I was in the middle of transitioning down to Pompano where I lived before the place I live now. So anyway, they got me on a plane. I was there. The body was still there by the time I got there. I had somebody pick me up at the airport. They were waiting. They escorted us all the way to Bayside where we lived at the time. And Kazoom, you know, there's yellow tape in my house, you know, like that emergency caution
Yeah.
tape, I guess they use. What's going on? And I asked my son, Matt, he was a young man at the time. I said, Matt, what's going on here? Dad, they found needles and packets of something. And these stupid idiots tagged the bags with their little symbols, like their God, these
Hmm.
morons. So he gives it away. Everybody, as we got there that night, and it was a gated community. So you had shit, 30 to 50 cars in there. They were all law enforcement, examiner, medical, everything. You know, friends of the family were there already. So, I mean, you couldn't get in your community. They actually had to open up a private gate that was
Hmm.
only used like if they were doing construction in there. So finally get in and we get into the house and I live dead smack in the middle of the community. You
Hmm.
could, if you drew a perfect circle like my avatar, right where the cigar is or my nose is exactly where I live.
Right.
So I get upstairs and there's this caution tape and I'm like, what the hell is, I didn't understand at all. They said we have to treat it as a homicide,
Hmm.
uh, a crime scene. It didn't say homicide at that point. I said, for what reason? And then they told me they found the symbol on the bags that were left there. So my younger son, Matt, was able to grab some stuff that was in the room before the cops grabbed it, but they looked everywhere because I guess when they brought him off the bed, they tried to do the resuscitation on the floor for some reason. I don't know to this day why. And the bed moved. I mean, the whole room was flipped apart. So they found more bags underneath there. A total of like 13 bags were
Right.
left, and there were empty bags underneath the bed, you know. And I think they found two syringes, and they also found some powdery substance and a dollar bill wrapped up, which wasn't cocaine like everybody thinks. It was more of a yellowish thing. I don't even know what it was. And that's exactly what happened. Passed away. So then they had opened up a crime, a case, you know, and if you know who it is, all right, and they know by the tagging, and every kid in the neighborhood now between Anthony's friends and Matthew's friends are out to kill this guy. Let's be realistic. You just killed our friend. All right. This kid is not getting arrested. Zero. She had multiple meetings with the undercover narcotics unit cops. Detectives would be up at the house every day. And like, something's wrong. You know, I knew who it was. They knew who it was. I got a phone call. My son's body was removed between, I say 2:45 a.m. and 4 a.m. I can't give you the exact time. Everything was a blur that night. I
Right.
got a phone call at about 4:45, 5 a.m. once everybody was out from a detective who had arrested Anthony once before, got a lawyer, got out of that case. All right. What are you calling me for? Well, you're going to go after the wrong guy. What the F are you even talking about? I'm going to go after the wrong guy. All right. He goes, listen, I'm telling you, it's not the guy you're looking for. I said, my son just left here in a bag. How do you know what the F is going on in my mind? None of your business. First of all, hung up on him. Then he called back my wife's cell phone. Same nonsense. And give me the damn phone. I said, listen, bro, I don't care who you think you are, what you think you are. I said, this game is over. Why are you throwing names out there? My son just left in a body bag.
Mm.
And they opened up a case on him, a criminal case. It's all over the place. They even had people throwing other names out now to try and throw you off course. I grabbed 4 or 5 kids
Mm.
and I'm like, look, man, your cousin is part of this deal with my son. I was like, what the F is going on? And he goes, I promise you, I've been clean for 2 years since Anthony left the first time I met. I said, let me ask you a question. Where is your cousin? He goes, he's in the same apartment. They're not hiding. They're not. So, all right. So the detectives come the next day. Excuse me, I gotta get a glass of water, drink
No
about this.
problem.
This gets me. Detectives come the next day. I said, listen, man, something's not making sense. I said, and this Hispanic detective is still in the middle of everything and he's not on this case. He goes, we don't know. He goes, we went in ourselves and spoke to our superiors. We're trying to see because they were buying and selling out of a garden apartment right off of Francis Lewis Boulevard. I was like, this is going to get taken care of one way or another by somebody eventually. I said, so I don't know what's going on here. I had to get back to Florida to take care of a couple of things, pay a few bills. I think I was there for a total of 48 hours at best. I was coming right back to New York.
Mm.
Because at the time we had a house in Pompano and a house in Champions Gate, which is Davenport. So I left for 2 days. My son didn't go back because it was still winter break. And then he took an extension of 2 weeks after that. And we had planned for my wife to come down as well. She wasn't going to stay there, obviously. The house was haunted or not. So he calls me up and he goes, Dad, they made an arrest. I says, okay, where did they get him? They got him in Brooklyn. I said, oh, that's great. Now, I already knew about the arrest, but I also already knew that they arraigned him in Queens. There goes the red lights go up in your head already. Something's fucking fishy here now. Okay, so what was fishy was he was an informant.
All right.
Okay, he was working with the Hispanic detective all along.
Mm.
So it started where I said, it's time now to go fight it back against these cops. They're all undercover cops. We had just gotten Ring camera. If you go back to 2016, is when
Yeah.
it became a thing. I says, I want you to freeze everyone and give me give me a color, black and white, whatever photo you can get. There goes your narcotic squad. I put it on every lamppost on Francis Lewis Bowl, any lamppost I could find. I was putting their pictures up. So they were still keeping his property, his phone, his wallet, everything. And I was like, whatever. And they made the arrest. The mother got 2 years. The father got 18 months. And he only got probation. Then he got rearrested and did a little bit of time. And part of the deal was for a first-time offender, because that's all he was at this time. He can go to rehab, and he was out. I don't know where he is till this day. Nobody has
Right.
seen him since that time.
Right.
And that was basically it, deal with it every day still, um,
And what kind of
Christmas,
impact? What kind
all,
of impact did it have on you, your wife, and your son after the death of your son? I know that's a question. Uh,
yeah,
everybody, everybody takes it the death different. I mean, did it make you closer, or did it do something to
it made
you?
us, me and my son have a bond that's unbreakable, where it was more me and Anthony, because Anthony was the oldest and Matt was the baby. So Matt was more around his mother, and Anthony was always with me. Very, very into sports. Matt wasn't into sports as much. He was into other stuff. And we became like this private group. No more friend, very, very in close private together. And we're best of friends, all of us to this day. There's no animosity at all. But it just became to the point where I don't want to sound cold saying it, is so many reminders of being around each other every day that it eventually broke after a year after that, a year and a half after that. And she went back to New York. I stayed in Florida. I want nothing to do with New York at that point. My
Right.
son, no, she came to Florida right afterwards. She wanted to move down here. We were going to try,
Yeah.
and Matt was still in Lynn University, which is in Boca Raton, which is only about 25 minutes from here. So we would have dinner 3, 4 nights a week, college kids, dinner time, get dinner, go home, still take a nap, and then we're back out. So it wasn't like the dinner time was killing them. And we became very, very close, but very private all of a sudden, where we used to have friends over all the time,
Right.
weekends, go on vacations, and that all stopped. Everything out the door, because it became where everybody apparently knew about all this drug use and was kind of covering it up,
Mm.
and a lot of the kids ended up being found out to be on drugs, and they all want to blame each other, and that causes a lot of animosity as well. Well, he was the first one to really pass in the neighborhood,
Right.
so let's all blame him as being the ringleader, which since 2016 we had 9 deaths this year that just passed, going back into 22 from August until present. And since Anthony's passed, I think there's up to 23 or 24 just
Yeah.
in the neighborhood. Just in the neighborhood. Same thing. And the problem, guys, is you don't know what the hell you're buying out on the street no more.
No.
This ain't like the 70s and 80s where you were getting drugs. You're getting fentanyl based garbage. I know nothing about the drug business at all. Never got involved with it. But nine out of every 10 things that are coming out is fentanyl based,
Hmm.
you know, and it's a huge problem. I speak to kids down here, not professionally, just kids who need help. I've been asked by parents when I'm in New York to speak to their kids who are not kids. Some of them are 33, 34 years old. You can get through to them a little bit,
Right.
get through to them for a little bit. I spoke to this one kid. His name is Noah. His father called me up frantic. When are you coming up again? I said, I'm actually coming up in about 3 days. I said, and I'm going to be up there for 2 weeks. I need you to speak to Noah. He's said he was sick. I said, whatever. What's going on? He lost about 60 pounds. Well put together kid, good looking young kid.
Wow.
I seen him. He shaved his head. He was skinny as a rail. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? You know what I mean? So I grabbed him. I took him for a ride. We had dinner. I said, look, no, I'm going to tell you something right now. I took when you go to a funeral, they have the cards with the picture and a prayer on them. Took it and smacked it on the table. I said, listen, I said, you grew up with Anthony. I says, when the F are you going to learn? I said, I will stay here or I will let you move to my house in Florida. I said, this has got to stop because we lived in such a close knit community there. It was probably the only gated community in Queens at the time. So he came with me to Florida for a couple of weeks, went back up there, looked like everything was good. He was in great shape again and everything. And this kid just happened to be so smart, he became one of the major drug dealers there and was buying Mercedes Benzes and everything. So that didn't work either. And he passed away. It was a year June 17th.
That's amazing.
So
And
that
a lot of these kids come from good families too.
They do.
You know.
Yeah, but Lee, you're familiar a little bit with the areas. Bayside
Yes.
is a money area. Whitestone is a money area.
Big money.
That's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the statistics out in Oyster Bay, Muttontown, we're talking multi-million-dollar homes. They're going everywhere. I mean, the schools are covering it up because, listen, it all comes down to dollars and cents in this world. And the schools, you're supposed to be terminated from college first time, and they tell you that at the orientation. You know how many warnings they were giving out into school? My son used to call me up hysterical. He goes, "Yeah, well, this kid's on his seventh warning. His father owned not Circus Soleil, but one of the branches of them. There's multiple
Right.
branches of these Circus Soleils." I said, "Well, what did he do now?" He drove through a building and into a lake. As long as they repaired it, had everything fixed, and they made a donation, he was allowed to stay in school.
Wow.
I'm like, God damn. And that's basically what it was. But it's a very difficult time because it is around the holidays. So it is private. There's no more big family get-togethers. It's just me, my ex-wife, my son. Jen stays with her family down here because she also has all the children. And we had an agreement that we were going to continue to do it that way, but no outsiders at all. It's made it where it's a very private, every holiday is private.
Yeah.
We might go see a friend later on in the night. You know, we've done that twice since, 7 years? But it's basically we just stay together. We go to dinner, no more cooking or anything like that. And we're making the best of the holidays now.
All right.
We really
Yeah.
are trying. And I think that actually brightens the spirit for us that we're doing it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a horrible thing. I mean, you never get over it, but it just doesn't hurt as much. It's
it doesn't
when you
hurt
think
as
about
much, but you know what it is? You know what it was too? Every way you drive, I mean, let's say you got to go to Francis Lewis Boulevard. Bang, there's Holy Cross High School. You run into his old school.
Yeah.
Let's go over here. Bang, he had something to do with over there. You used to pull right out of my complex. You'd be facing the Throgs Neck Bridge. I lived right, next to the Throgs Neck Bridge. So you'd be coming out of my complex. There's the roller hockey rink. Bang, right. So she had gone back when her mom had surgery, and she had a tumor removed, like next to her ear or something on the jaw side. And she called me back the second night. "I can't stay here." I said, "Well, what's going on?" I didn't realize, I didn't understand it either. And we learned. I cannot stay here. She goes, "I can't sleep. I'm holding a pillow in bed." I was like, okay, let me take care of this right away. Now, Matt was here in school in Florida. I was in Florida. I got a friend of ours. Thank God we still kept this friendship. And they got her and they took her to a house. And I said, "Stay another day, make sure your mom's all right, and get the hell out of there." I said, "I'm coming up there in a couple of days because I had my own doctor's appointments." I said, "I'll be up there in a couple of days." She goes, "I can't. I can't wait that long." So she made sure her mom was fine. Her mom went home and she was on the first flight back to Florida. She, so, it was just, she couldn't even be in the state. It was that difficult.
Mm.
And the only thing that changed for her was after Matt graduated, he stayed down for another year because he was a pretty big DJ down here by that time. Matthew worked the most popular nightclubs in Delray Beach and even some of you ever hear of these Blue Martinis?
yes,
Yeah, I know.
Pretty
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, so Matt had the contract with his company to be the DJs at all the Blue Martinis. They had like a Latin night, a freestyle night, an older, like 60s Motown kind.
Yeah.
He did all those. And he finally woke up, thank God, right before COVID, or he would have been shit. I'm sorry I mentioned that word, but and he said to me one day, he goes, "Dad, can you make any phone calls and see if you can get me in a union?" He goes, "This ain't gonna last forever." And I says, "Yeah." I says, "What do you want to do?" He goes, "I want to go home." It's okay. So I went up and I thought that maybe she was ready to go back to the house. Absolutely not. Because I
Okay.
knew she was going too. Now it's where she's never going to be without him again. You know what I mean? Even if
Right.
he's 10 miles away, that's fine. but you're going to be in the same state. And that pretty much was the end of us after that, because I had established a business down here by that time.
Right.
So what happened was I called somebody that I had mentioned earlier, and he said, tell him to report over here, see this guy, and we'll take care of it from there. And what happened was he went and he didn't take 2 days off. His second day back in New York, he started as a regular field laborer worker, pretty much a golfer, to he's one of the vice presidents of the company now. And he's making very, very good living.
Good.
And sees his mother between 3 and 5 times a week. When I go up there, I see him all the time, and I was supposed to go the other night, but Jen had a problem with the potassium. So when I'm going up there, I always spend time with him, see him sometimes every day when we're up there.
Mhm.
So we're gonna jump up now. Tony, how long have you been around YouTube, and were you surprised how viciously you've been attacked?
Oh, absolutely. I'm shocked about that. And I didn't know anything. I started YouTube exactly. I got to look on my phone to tell you. I honestly do. Not that long.
Right.
All I did was listen to the music when I went to the gym. So it says it on your channel here. So what the hell does it say? I want to say 21, but I want to be sure so people don't say, oh, he's lying about that. What the hell is it? How do you get to it? Not too long. I think it was 20 or 21
Right.
that I actually came around. Maybe 20, we'll say. All right, we'll even go that far. But I never knew anything about this genre. I only thought it was about music and maybe you catch some old movies or stuff like that. Then I seen a friend of mine's name on that Panisi show one day. I
Right.
said, oh, what the hell's he doing out here? And I know him since I'm a kid. They came
Mhm.
over from Sicily when I was 14, 15 years old.
Right.
So I went there and he was telling him bullshit about a guy borrowed 8,000. He needed 8,000. He went there. He would only give him 6. And I'm saying everything this guy's saying don't make sense. So he goes, well, they went to a barber shop and they settled this over there or some bullshit or another. And I made a comment. That was the one and only comment I ever made. And that's what I'm being ripped apart now.
Yeah, that's the famous
I
comment. What they do? Yeah, it's like amazing how they tore that apart.
Hmm.
Well, you can go through, like I said to Angel, I give you all the damn accounts I ever had. I've had 2 accounts because every time you buy a phone with these Apple IDs, I've had
Mhm.
2 phones since then. I have my personal phone and I always kept my son's phone. So I made one comment and all the comments said was, you know everything about the person or some bullshit. That was his cousin's barbershop. And you don't
Hmm.
even know that. That's how you knew the guy was full of crap. That's all. There was nothing more, nothing less. It was about a barbershop. Was the only thing on that comment.
And so you're in this genre now, and if you could do anything different, being everything's been very controversial with you, but your show's doing well, and you started your show. I'm not even sure if you were considering to start a show. What would you do different if you had to do anything? Would you do it the same way?
No, absolutely not. Because what people don't understand is I was very involved in boxing. Okay.
Right.
To me, I never said I made millions of dollars. If anybody can find me saying that, I'll shut the thing and leave YouTube too for that. If you receive $150, to me, that's a professional fight. Okay.
Right.
I actually watched Bud Crawford's documentary the other night. He didn't make anything over $3,000 until his seventh fight. Now that's a guy who came out as a highly ranked, top ranked. Everybody knew he had a shot of being a champion. So there's not much money there unless you crack a big deal and Bud Crawford
Right.
wasn't big enough to crack that kind of deal. I think the biggest deal up to that point was maybe just a couple of guys in the 76 team and then the year that Holyfield and all those guys went in. Besides that, amateur fighters, look at Tyson, what he made. Tyson wasn't making more than 10,000 a fight until I think his first 8 or 9 fights. And then they boosted him up when Dave Jacobs
Right.
and Bill
Eh,
Payton came in.
okay. I don't mean to pull away from the boxing, but you and I could do a whole show on boxing. That's for damn sure. So you're in this. You're being attacked. You did you just decide with Jen that you were going to do your own show? I mean, how did that come part where you just said, you know what, I'm gonna do my own show? And are you surprised about how many views you've been getting?
Oh, 100%. I thought at best, Lee, I'd get maybe 25 people. All I wanted to do, honestly, if you look at the original tab, was do boxing like I originally intended to do. And honestly, I thought you were going to be part of it. And when I found out it was somebody else, I didn't pull out, which I should have done. I thought it was going to be me, you, and another gentleman, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
And I was told that was even bullshit. I was told, and I asked you about it, that you quit because of me. I said, I don't even know the
Mm-mm.
gentleman. Why would he, and I'm glad we finally were able to straighten
And
that out.
everybody knows why I quit, but I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to be
No, it
attacking
has
nobody
no
right now.
bearing. I just
Yeah,
felt
but it
bad
had
that I
nothing to
brought
do
you
with
up,
you. Right.
and I appreciate that you took the time and told me. No, it
Yeah.
was to me it was only about going into sports. I didn't consider myself in this genre until I started getting attacked, to be quite honest with
And
my
why do you
show.
think? And why do you think there's so much? Like I've seen show after show done. Like maybe one person do like 5 shows on you in one week. Why do you think people are so angry and treacherous toward older people like ourselves?
I'm going to tell you why. And I consider you almost in the same pattern as me. You're about the only guy who had the chops to go to other people to defend a couple of ladies since I've been
Yes.
watching. Okay. I'm that I know of, I'm the only second person who actually went to these people instead of just kept it on their show for content. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Does that make
Yes.
sense? We
Yeah.
actually broke barrier and went and talked to these people where they'd rather say it from a keyboard and with their chat audience and not go over that, you know? And I think the night that Angela went on first and then Angel followed her to FBS's chat, that soured them there. And then Angel brought me back when Johnny the Third was going to start the fight, the Friday, the day you guys had Sakali on. That was my first night back on Angel's, not her show, as a guest on her platform,
Right.
her
Yeah.
platform. And we discussed it, and all we was going to do was the undercut. Then the fight came. Me and Jen were at the fight. Jen had just gotten out of the hospital a couple of days, maybe 4 or 5 days before that. So I know people down here. I purchased a box for a decent price, and then we went down for the fight. Then the controversy at the fight. So then we continued for about a week straight talking about the fight almost every day. All right. So a troll came in, which I really didn't even know what a troll was. I'm being completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I never was trolled. I was never any of this crap. Now I understand watching you in the earlier days what you were going through. So all of a sudden I see my avatar. Actually, it wasn't even my avatar. It must have been a screenshot taken off of one of the shows I did with sex toys next to my face. And
We've
me
all
and
been there, Tony. It's a sick,
and
stuff.
not for nothing, I wish I would have watched more of you instead of only the ones that I found more interesting because you dealt with it and you grew perfectly. All right. And that's the state I'm at right now. But Angel said to me, and I said to Angel at the same identical time, because at that time we were in communication because I was going down to the fight and we had became friendly. Thanks to you guys having Sakali on. I'm going to be very honest with you. We got a little
Yeah.
closer. And I'm glad we're all friendly now. Okay. So what happened was she texted me or I texted her or emailed. We both knew who it was just by the wording and everything. And we snapped that night, both of us. And I didn't deal with it well for, I would say, about a month. And now I've learned to, you know what, not even look at them no more. I mean, let them
Yeah.
do what they want to do. I watch you guys. If you look at my, and I keep them open. I'm subscribed to you guys on, I think, 2 channels, Angel, a couple, and maybe 3 other people. That's it. I'm not even going to look at their shows any longer because they don't make any sense. Then Angel had called me the other night and told me about the one that Agnostic did with MRA. So I said,
And
all
you
right,
you
let
just
me.
you just tore him apart. And that's when I kind of when you did that, I'll be honest with you, because I know New York pretty well, and you were making some very valid points about where people live and what roadways run. You literally caught him lying. And then we had
I
the
seen you.
conversation.
Well, you know where
I'm
I
sorry.
seen him first? I seen him in your chat a while
Yes.
ago, and he goes, "They can," and its famous line is, "Not everybody can tell you that story, but I can, I can, I can." And then I believe you invited him on, if I remember right, and he never showed up, as far as
No,
I know.
no. I'm glad he didn't because that would have been bad for me. I'm just glad that worked out. But anyway,
You know,
I'm gonna put your channel underneath this video, and ask people to sub to your channel. And I like this. So, what are you planning on doing with your channel? Because I know that you and Jen are supposed to be doing something together. So, what is your plan for it?
okay, I plan on bringing like old fights, classic fights, like me and you discussed the other night, and giving you the before, the during, and the after. What led to the fight? You know, like to me, the Ali Frazier one, I wanted to do that first, but there's so much more I'm finding that I'm not just going to throw it out there.
Right,
So my next one is going to be Wilfredo Benitez and Sugar Ray Leonard, which is a
right.
very, very interesting story that people don't
Very,
know.
very,
But
very interesting.
they were brother-in-laws. You know,
Yes, they
people don't
were.
even know that to this day. So that's going to be the first one. Jen's going to be doing a domestic violence one with because she's a survivor of domestic violence with Adam, the attorney, and that
Right,
wonderful woman Caroline.
right.
And she's going to run a few of those. We're going to bring true stories that are going on in the world. But I like to keep to if it's going to be either baseball, there's some interesting things in baseball. I mean, you ask people about baseball, it's a one-line sentence and then I'm done. Don Lawson, oh, he must have been the greatest pitcher ever. Look at his stats. He was a
Yeah, he
subpar
was
pitcher.
one great game.
Yeah.
You know, there could be fights at a dining room table during the holidays. That what are you talking about? He picked yeah, a perfect game. What about his
Mhm.
other games? You know, he really wasn't that great of a Major League Baseball
No.
pitcher. You know, so we're going to go into things like that. We're going to go into the way stadiums have changed since the day of time. It's all people go to the games now. Not if you look at Yankee Stadium at a Yankee game, you'll see more people texting and never lift their head to look at the field. They just want to
Ridiculous.
be in the
Yeah,
atmosphere, and that drives me crazy. You're
yeah.
sitting in the most expensive seat in Yankee Stadium. I watched this lady in Manic caught my eye one night. The lady never lifted her head,
Hmm.
and they were playing the Red Sox. I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" You know. And there's just a lot of things that people don't know about sports that go on behind the scenes.
So
And for
you're basically gonna be more sports oriented, with maybe sometimes having other topics. Are you gonna discuss any mob stuff or anything like that?
I will, but not when they're all alive. I will never talk about a
Right.
living person. You know, to me, that's just crossing the line because I broke bread with these people since I'm a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I plan on doing a show on Tony, obviously. A couple of other guys who passed away there prior to him. I'm going to loop that all in, but nothing on a regular basis with that. You know, you guys are the experts at that. I mean, I got to be honest with you when that bullshit jacket incident came up that time, I stopped watching for a little bit, but I still watched. I didn't tell anybody. I love the content you have. And I even said it that night that I said I didn't agree with you having Luisi on. I said, and you can go back and watch that video. I thought you were doing your best work since James joined you. I mean, I think you finally found the right mix
And we
and people
and for this
being
show,
together.
we've decided that if somebody wants to come on, we're going to give them the opportunity. It's not some people ain't going to like it. But
Right.
we're nobody's friend. We're not their friends. We're going to give them tough interviews. And James, what would you like to ask Tony? I'm going to give you the opportunity to close this out. What would you like to ask Tony before we close this out?
Yeah. So, what are your long term goals for the channel, or is there anything that you want to? Is this
I
like a
really want to
legacy, or what do you want to see with this?
I really want to do sport in a way that people have no idea of the true story of things. You know, like I give you just a quick, like when the Yankees played the Braves during that World Series. People don't understand that Joe Torre never spent one night with the team during that whole Atlanta Braves series. He
Wow.
would be to his brother who was going through a heart transplant.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
I
that's
mean,
remember
right.
you know,
that.
things like that, stuff like that. The Ali Frazier thing. People don't know that Joe Frazier basically bankrolled Muhammad Ali
Yeah.
for about a year because he was suspended for boxing. And then when he got out of the car one day, he went into the Muhammad Ali routine, and that was the end of that friendship. And Joe was so hurt by that. Now, I met Joe Frazier. He did a lot of, I was part of Ring 8, a Veterans Boxing Association club with Sonny Francis.
Mm.
Okay. He was a big member there. Okay. When he was free. So I sat at
And,
a lot of
yeah.
dinners with him. He made a lot of conversations. You'd have no idea about that side of Sonny Francis. I
Right.
might not know about everything he did in that world, but he was like a little kid at boxing matches.
Wow.
I mean, he'd come in the back, he'd say hello to the guys in the locker rooms. You know, I was a big part of Kevin Kelly's team, the Flushing Flash. He would come, and he would have the son who testified against him at the end. I mean, he was like a little kid. He wanted to meet all the
Yeah.
fighters, see all the fighters, say hello, and go back to his seat. I went
Mm.
to every Christmas party with him that he was free. Like I said, George Chavallo, he stayed at my house for 4 days. I never met the man before that. I
Yeah.
learned so much about his life. And then he
A
was
very
just
underrated. He was a very underrated boxer that came along at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
right. He
Because he had
came
to
into
fight.
you absolutely right.
Well,
Larry
yeah,
Holmes. I want to bring out why Larry Holmes was kept kind of in the dark until he was. Larry was kept in the dark because that was Muhammad Ali's key sparring partner for years.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And
and
they really didn't want a young Holmes going in there with an Ali or somebody like that at
Right.
that time. They're very underrated fighters. So
Holmes was, yeah.
my goal is to bring sports the right way and call fights out of my mouth where a regular person will understand it instead of what
Mm-hmm.
you might hear from a commentator on there, on the actual Showtime channels or the DAZN. Sometimes they get a little bit too technical, but what I'm seeing is because the way I say them in the two fights I've covered, actually,
yeah,
you're starting to see a lot of women come in and they love the way the lingo of the conversation is going. And I like to interact with the comments during the fight.
Right.
You don't have to agree with me. Maybe you caught something, I missed something. I'll be the first one to say it. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to make the channel a very sports-based show. And if something major comes up that I really know in that world, I might run it by you, Angel, talk to you guys, see how you guys want to deal with it, and see if we can be all on the same page, maybe if that's something you'd be interested in someday. You know, there's a lot of statements that are out there that I'm not going to say I know everything. There's a lot of statements that these guys make that are just pure bullshit. And I do not
Yeah.
know nothing really about the inter parts of Brooklyn there. So I'm not going to
right.
bullshit
And
you.
let
But
me
my
ask you
whole thing the other
one.
night was, yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm gonna just ask you one thing. What's the last thing? And I'm not meaning to cut you off, but I got like a limit on this. And you and I got to actually do a boxing show together because I could talk
absolutely.
about boxing all day long with you. And but what I was going to
Absolutely.
ask you, though, what's the last thing you like to say to people? Okay, we're going to end the interview now. What's the last thing you'd like to say to people, uh, just to kind of like talk about as quick as you can the little controversy that's happening, what you're doing now? Uh, would you like to reach out to those people that are judging you? I mean, what would you like to do?
Yeah, I'd like to say maybe trolling is part of the game. And if I overreacted, I apologize for that. But watch me on if it's my show or somebody else's show and see I'm a gentleman. I don't like to see women get abused, and I'm a regular guy who wants to watch sports and call sports like every other guy. And the first and most important thing in my life is my family. I'm not this barbaric animal. A lot of the stuff about private planes and all that bullshit was made up by another guy, busting balls, and people took that and ran with it. I mean, if you get a date wrong, so that's why you're hesitant to even say, was it this day or that day? I'm just a regular guy who's trying to enjoy his life. And honestly, I just want to be a family man. And I'd like to keep limited friends on here because there's certain barriers people have crossed. No, I have no interest in being around them, doing anything with them. That's not for me. I'm a regular guy, Lee. And you know what? I think it took you too some time to get into where you are now. You look so much more comfortable now, Lee,
Oh,
and you're so much,
I'll
no,
give you
I'm
this.
being
I'll tell
serious.
you. I'll tell you what, Tony. Yesterday, some schmo basically did a show on me, and I was like, I said, "Oh, am I going to react to this?" And I never reacted to it because at that moment I realized his numbers
not
don't
working.
compare to mine. We can't even put the shows in the same league, so why should I answer him?
I tell you what, I did a sports show with a couple of other fellas for approximately 2.5, 3 months. Okay. I don't think we've cracked 1,000 views in the whole 2.5, 3 months. I'm being
Yeah.
dead serious. Maybe around between 1,000 and 1,200. I'm up to like 9,000 views in 3 shows.
Yeah,
You
and be
know,
proud of that. And be
and
proud of that.
I am very proud of it because I've pulled off some things with a couple of technical, glicks behind the scenes that just me being Tony
Right.
can overcome it because of
Mhm.
my knowledge. And I am very proud of what me and Jen have accomplished already. And I think we're going to do a lot of good things. So give us a shot and see the better part of us.
Well, I'm gonna put your show underneath here, and Tony, I want to thank you for being on here. We could have done I mean, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg with your life, and I realize that. And
Anytime, guys.
I just want to thank you for being here. And I'll put your information underneath here, and basically tell people to look out when you get your shows up. But thank you so much, and thank you so much for sharing the tragedy of your son with
Yeah.
us. We really appreciate
You
that.
got it. And I want to say, Lee, James, thank you first of all, and I
Thank
hope we
you.
get to know each other better. But
Sure.
Lee, I'm so happy that we became,
Yes.
same page almost. You know what I mean?
Yep.
We had the same goals, and maybe that was the problem. We knocked heads a little bit because we are a lot alike in a lot of ways. But I'm so appreciative that we have a relationship now, and thank you so much for
If you
having
could
me.
stay on the show, I'm going to end the show right now. But if you could stay on, I'd appreciate it. I would just want to mention something to you real quick in private. Okay.
Sure.
Everybody,
You got it.
thank you. Please subscribe, hit the like button, the reminder bell. We really appreciate it. And please hit the like. That means a lot to us also. Take care, people, and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.